My son banned me from my grandson's birthday, but what happened next was absolutely incredible. Martha sat at her kitchen table, the smell of coffee swirling through the air, mingling with the vibrant colors of balloons and streamers wafting in from across the street. As laughter and joyful shouts erupted from her son's meticulously organized birthday party, her heart twisted painfully. Today was Henry's third birthday, a day she had envisioned brimming with family warmth, smiles, and the innocence of childhood. Instead, it was marred by Jake's decision to ban her from the celebration. An unwelcome pulse of hurt and confusion coursed through her. How had they come to this point? The clanging of pots and pans in her small kitchen became the background noise of memories. The sacrifices she made for her children's futures, the long hours spent supporting Jake's ambitions, all leading to this moment where she felt like an outsider. Each stroke of her worn hands on the countertop echoed the absence of her own dreams. She had once dreamed of writing, a life of pen and paper filled with stories that could touch the world. But the reality of mothering had overtaken that spark. She raised her children on her own, baked the cakes, and fought fiercely for their happiness. She thought they would always remember that love wasn't tied to wealth or accolades. But as Jake threw himself into his corporate career, Martha often felt the invisible wall between them grow thicker, lined with material success forged from late nights and early mornings. Would he ever understand that true success was more than a paycheck? Did he even want to hear her thoughts? She hesitated, feeling a throbbing ache deep in her chest. In those moments of deep contemplation, an old journal she had tucked away surfaced in her mind. Dusty and forgotten, it sat like a relic of the woman she used to be, the woman still aching to breathe life into unresolved dreams. Before she could falter, she leaped from the table, rummaging through the cabinet until her fingers found the leather-bound book. As she opened its faded pages, the feeling of nostalgia washed over her, mingling with regret and an intoxicating drive to be seen. Words poured through her fingertips onto the bright white paper as she crafted a heartfelt letter to Jake. She laid bare her soul, shared her fears of a world where wealth drowned out connection, reliving the hopes she had surrendered all those years ago. Each stroke of the pen felt liberating, yet anxiety-inducing, realizing she had concealed so much from her own son. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she uploaded her letter to an online blog aiming to explore family relationships, her heart raced, narrowing her focus on the screen in front of her. Was this act going to matter? Within hours, responses began to flood in from strangers, sharing their own struggles with family divides and values. Each comment threaded a connection she desperately longed for in her own life. Martha felt hope swell in her chest for the first time in years, yet she still teetered on the edge of despair with the overwhelming realization of what lay ahead. The attention was intoxicating, but would it help mend her fractured relationship with Jake? A week later, a publisher reached out, eager to transform her heartfelt message into a book. Excitement clashed with fear in a tango of possibility. Could her writing, once simply a method to heal her own heart, now rebuild the bridge between her and her son? Would Jake acknowledge her pain and the truths she dared to articulate? The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her, heavy and all-consuming. Martha remained in limbo, suspended between possibilities, teetering on the precipice between dreams reclaimed and the risk of further alienation from the son she loved. In her heart, the question lingered like a specter. Would her son ever truly see her? Martha stared at her laptop, her fingers hovering above the keys, filled with a mix of trepidation and eagerness. The publisher's proposal was not just a doorway to fulfillment, it was an opportunity to redefine her relationship with Jake. It beckoned her into the unknown, where words had the power to heal and transform. The idea of becoming a published author exhilarated her, yet the fear of further estrangement from Jake haunted her thoughts. Could she intertwine her dreams with the painful reality they shared? The weight of her aspirations pulled her one way, while the fear of judgment pushed her in the opposite direction. She could either embrace this moment and step into the light, or retreat to the shadows where she had spent so much of her life. With her heart pounding, she took a deep breath and opened a new document. The words flowed like a river, raw and unfiltered. She wrote about her experiences as a mother, her unfulfilled dreams, and the love that, despite everything, still bound her to Jake. As she typed, her thoughts shifted from the pain of rejection to the power of revelation. Perhaps this book could communicate the parts of her she had kept hidden, not only from Jake, but from herself. It was not simply about crafting a story, it was about articulating the complexity of her identity: a mother, a woman, a writer. Each sentence became a step toward personal clarity, allowing her to confront her long-buried emotions. She shared her doubts, her disappointments, and the conviction that she was worthy of understanding. Days turned into nights as Martha became increasingly engrossed in her writing. Surrounded by piles of old notebooks and cups of cold coffee, she lost track of time. One evening, as she pulled an all-nighter, she stumbled upon an entry reflecting her former self, a young woman dreaming of telling stories that would resonate. With every word she wrote, she could hear echoing laughter from days past, yet it was overlaid with the sadness of growing apart from her son. With new fervor, she decided to incorporate elements of their shared history into the manuscript, anecdotes that could bridge the gap between them. She wrote about the quiet afternoons spent in the park, the laughter during family gatherings, and the struggles they faced together. In doing so, she began to weave a tapestry of understanding and compassion, illustrating how easily love could become overshadowed by life's demands. However, as she neared completion, a voice within whispered doubts. Would Jake read these words and find healing, or would he view them as another form of criticism? Would he see her vulnerability as a strength or a weakness? The echoes of fear transformed into a driving force for Martha, pushing her to confront these uncertainties head-on. She wanted to inspire conversation, not criticism. The thought ignited a fierce resolve within her. She reached a turning point as she crafted the final chapters, articulating her hopes for him, for relationship repair, for blessings exchanged rather than walls erected. This was not just her story, but an invitation for Jake to see her as she truly was. Finally, with the manuscript finished, Martha felt a mixture of exhilaration and paralyzing fear. She sent the completed work to her publisher, her heart racing in the silence of the empty room. Would this act of courage open their dialogue, or was she inviting more heartache into her life? As she sat back in her chair, a deep breath washed over her. The journey ahead felt uncertain yet exhilarating. The urgency in her heart grew. She knew she had to confront Jake, to present her work and lay bare her soul before him. The time had come to face the truth of their relationship. With a sense of determination, she reached for her phone, knowing full well that what she was about to do would change everything. Would Jake be willing to connect, or would this be the final nail in the coffin of their relationship? Martha inhaled deeply, allowing the silence to wash over her. The phone in her hand felt heavy with the weight of her decision as she hesitated. Each ring could act as a bridge to healing, or a chasm that swallowed her hopes whole. She envisioned Jake's face, the expressions that had often morphed from warmth to coldness. Would he understand? With an urgency born from desperation, she dialed his number, her heart thrumming in her chest. The sound of her own breath echoed in the quiet, loud, anxious, almost suffocating. As the phone rang, she imagined words spilling out of her mouth, grappling with the fear that gripped her heart. "I wrote something for you," she would say, then fall silent, terrified of his possible response. But the line clicked, and she was abruptly met with Jake's familiar voicemail. The disappointment surged through her like an electric shock. She didn't realize how much she needed to hear his voice until it wasn't there. Resting the phone on her knee, she closed her eyes and ruminated on where to go next. Instead of retreating, an internal fire sparked. Martha resolved to share her manuscript with him through email, a form of communication that, while indirect, still offered a chance for connection. As she opened her laptop again, the thought of Jake reading her words filled her with an odd combination of dread and hope. She crafted an email that straddled the fine line between vulnerability and assertiveness. "Jake, I want you to see me, not just as your ex-wife or the mother of our son, but as the woman I'm becoming. This manuscript is a piece of my heart, filled with stories that include you and the experiences we've shared." With trembling hands, Martha hit send, and she felt the rush of liberation, mixed with an unsettling apprehension that clung to her mind like fog. There was no turning back now. For the next few days, a newfound determination settled in her soul. Martha delved deeper into the themes of her manuscript, expanding on the reconnection she hoped for. She filled her mornings with drafting articles related to her journey of self-discovery, intertwining personal anecdotes with advice for other mothers who might find themselves drifting away from their children. This wasn't merely an act of self-expression. It became a mission to reclaim not just her narrative, but to offer encouragement to others lost in similar scenarios. Yet the fear of Jake's reaction loomed large in her mind. Each ping on her phone set her heart racing. Was it him? But days passed with only silence, and Martha found herself spiraling into doubt once again. Was she wrong to think her words could bridge such an expansive divide? Late one night, as she stared at the blank screen, a familiar pang of uncertainty clenched her chest. The laughter of her son, once a constant in her life, now danced just out of reach. She longed for something tangible, a sign of acceptance or at least recognition of her efforts. Yet all that remained was the unanswered communication swirling in the void. In the grip of sleeplessness, her mind wrestled with memories of both joy and regret. Recollections punctuated with an underlying fear that perhaps she had gambled everything on a flurry of words. It was a daunting realization. She feared her own growth may come with an overwhelming price she wasn't yet ready to pay, the possibility of destroying whatever was left of their connection. Just as sorrow began to seep in, her phone vibrated beside her, jolting her from self-doubt. She glanced down, her breath hitching in disbelief. It was a message from Jake. A moment later, she clicked the notification and read his words. "I got what you sent. Can we talk?" The mixture of anxiety and anticipation sent her heart racing once more. Could this be the moment where everything changes? Would this conversation bring clarity, or would it pull them further apart into an abyss? Fingers trembling, she started typing her response, knowing that whatever came next could irrevocably shift the course of their lives. Martha hovered over her phone, the glow of the screen illuminating her anxiety. Each word she typed felt like a tether to her past, and she scrutinized her response, seeking a tone of balance between hope and caution. "Yes, I'd like that," she finally replied, her heart pounding as she pressed send. As the message disappeared into the ether, her imagination spiraled into possibilities. What would he say? Would he want to share old memories or risk opening wounds? The next day crawled by in a haze, punctuated only by glimmers of anticipation and doubt. As Martha drafted articles about resilience and motherhood, her thoughts frequently breached the structure of her writing, chasing the elusive clarity she yearned for in her relationship with Jake. Each article reflected her evolving understanding of parenting and personal growth, drawing from her experiences of heartbreak and the lessons she gained, lessons she hoped to impart. But beneath her industrious facade, a tempest brewed. She wrestled with the tension between her newfound confidence and the vulnerability of facing Jake again. The insecurity she had battled for years hissed in her ears, whispering that she was unworthy of his time, unworthy of meaningful conversation. Yet her determination was steel, ready to forge a connection in the fire of uncertainty. When the time arrived for their call, Martha sank into her living room chair, clutching a pillow as if it could absorb the tremors that coursed through her. The phone rang, and as she inhaled sharply, the sound sliced through the stillness of her home. With trembling hands, she answered. "Hey, Martha." Jake's voice slipped through the line, both familiar and foreign, sending waves of nostalgia through her. "I read your email. I didn't know you felt that way." She swallowed, stifling the instinct to deny her emotions. "I wanted you to understand," she said. "We've been reflecting on everything, the good and the bad. I'm trying to step into a new chapter." Silence followed, stretchable and intense. Martha's heart thudded in her chest, her intuition screaming at her to maintain her composure, to resist the urge of retreating into her protective shell. She sensed that Jake was engaging with her differently, intrigued by the woman she was becoming rather than the mother or ex-wife he had known. "I get that," he replied, slowly. "I didn't realize how hard it was for you. I know things have been rough, and I didn't help, but I want to understand better." His words felt like an olive branch. Martha felt hesitant yet hopeful, a potent combination. "It's not just about us," she pressed cautiously. "I want our son to see us work through this. I want him to know that people can grow, that healing is possible." She heard a sharp intake of breath. "You really mean that?" Jake asked, the edge of skepticism lacing his tone. "Yes." The conviction simmered in her voice, destiny weaving its threads through her nuances. "We can't erase the past, but we can create a healthier connection for him. I don't want to hold on to what was. I need to move forward." Jake's sigh on the other side was heavy, and Martha could picture him running a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize in moments of contemplation. "I'd like to be part of that," he finally said, a timid lightness breaking through the weightiness of their history. "What are you thinking?" Her mind raced with the possibilities of co-parenting in a more honest, open way. They could revisit the idea of family events, even holidays. She envisioned them setting new boundaries and expectations, together re-entangling the strands of their lives. "Let's create new traditions," she suggested, voice steady. "Let's plan for our son's birthday together." The gravity of the moment carried her words. He would be involved. They could foster a connection that honored their shared responsibilities, one that paved the way for their son to bloom into a well-rounded individual. "All right," he replied, an edge of enthusiasm creeping into his voice. "Let's do it. I'll figure out the details." As they reached the end of the conversation, Martha felt a new resolve swell within her. The tension that had once gripped her heart now eased, replaced by a burgeoning sense of belonging. What had felt like an insurmountable mountain was slowly becoming an achievable summit. Just before they hung up, Jake cleared his throat. "Hey, what you did, sending me your manuscript, it took courage. I don't think I ever told you that." Martha smiled, not simply in gratitude, but out of realization that her journey was transforming not just her, but also how Jake perceived her. She was no longer trapped in the past, but stepping into a future filled with hope. As she ended the call, an unexpected emotion surged through her: pride. A soft warmth nested in her chest, echoing the strides she had made, yet she knew this was just the beginning. With the promise of renewal hanging in the air, Martha opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keys. There was something deeper waiting to emerge from within her, a story yet to be told, raw and transformative. What else would she unearth from this growing partnership? And could she find a way to weave their shared past into a vibrant narrative of hope? Her heart quickened again at the thought. She realized the next chapter was waiting, both in her manuscript and the unfolding relationship with Jake. Martha closed her laptop after several hours of writing, her fingers slightly sore from typing. The words that flowed from her had stirred something deep within her, a realization of her own potential. She had always known her voice mattered, but now it felt louder, more defined. The manuscript was her anchor, a reflection of who she had become amidst the turbulence of her past. Yet a thread of fear tugged at her heart, a fear of being vulnerable again, especially with Jake. The conversation they had shared was significant, but it had also unzipped a vulnerability that felt both exhilarating and frightening. She found herself questioning if their newfound communication could really sustain the changes they envisioned. Would he remain engaged, or would the complexities of their history rear up again and threaten to dismantle their progress? Determined to channel that anxiety into productivity, she turned her attention back to her article. This piece was different. It wasn't just a professional task, but a personal exploration of recovery from emotional turmoil. Her reflections swelled with authenticity as she projected her insights onto the screen. It was a quest not merely to advise others, but to reaffirm her own path, resilience, acceptance, and the daring pursuit of forgiveness. As she immersed herself in writing, the ideas crystallized, giving life to concepts she had circled for years. She drew on her experiences and lessons learned, things she now wanted to pass on to other mothers facing the chaos of co-parenting. It was crucial for the mothers to understand that strength could manifest not only through survival, but through the intentional act of forging connections from the remnants of their pasts. The next day, as Martha mulled over her manuscript, her phone buzzed. A message from Jake. As she read it, a spark of apprehension ignited. He proposed a separate meeting over coffee to discuss their parenting strategies in more depth, eager to move beyond the phone call's tentative agreements. Yet, the thought of meeting him face to face was a double-edged sword. If this meeting was about their son, then it was also inherently tied to their history, their unfinished business. She knew she had two choices: to cling to the protective wall she had built and avoid confrontation, or to embrace the discomfort of vulnerability in pursuit of something greater. As she paused to reflect, a memory surfaced, one of her mother encouraging her to face challenges head-on, to extract lessons rather than shrink back into fear. Contemplating her response, Martha realized that growth often resides in the spaces where discomfort dwells. She quickly typed a reply, one that embraced the potential for open dialogue. "Sure, I'm open to that. Just let me know when you'd like to meet." Once sent, a wave of nervousness cascaded over her, making her second-guess the decision. But this was part of her evolution. She had to remind herself that every step away from her comfort zone built the resilience she was so keen to impart to her son. Days passed, and with each tick of the clock, the day of their coffee meeting approached. She prepared by listing potential discussion points, framing her thoughts around co-parenting strategies and boundaries. Yet in the quiet moments of reflection, doubt seeped in. Was she truly ready to confront Jake's past actions, or would she retreat to safer topics? As the hour neared, she dressed deliberately, choosing a light blouse that made her feel confident. This decision ignited an inner resolve that pulsed with anticipation. Each step towards the cafe felt like a step into an unknown territory, asking her to confront not just Jake, but the remnants of old grievances that had once consumed her. What she hadn't anticipated was that the encounter would force her to grapple with her own emotions, moments when she would have to decide whether to prioritize her long-standing beliefs or the newly formed aspirations she had begun to nurture. Right as she arrived, she caught a glimpse of Jake through the window, sipping coffee and scanning the room. She hesitated at the entrance, poised between retreat and engagement. This was not merely a meeting, it was a pivotal moment that could shape the dynamic of their relationship going forward. With a deep breath, she pushed the glass door open. The chimes signaling her arrival filled the air, a herald of the profound encounter that awaited. As she stepped inside, the stakes loomed larger than she'd anticipated. Would this conversation fortify their bond or unravel the threads they had begun weaving anew? Martha's heart raced as she approached Jake's table, each step a blend of trepidation and determination. The pleasant aroma of coffee mingled with the tension thickening the air between them. She settled into the chair across from him, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Jake smiled faintly, but the warmth she had hoped to find was tinged with uncertainty. "Thanks for meeting," he said, his voice casual yet layered with unspoken words. "Of course," she replied, mustering a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Jake shifted slightly, mirroring her nervousness as he stirred his coffee. "I really appreciated our last conversation. Did you have more thoughts on how we can navigate co-parenting?" Martha's mind raced. This wasn't just about strategies for their son, but an opportunity to address the emotional landscape between them. She took a breath, endeavoring to frame her thoughts with the clarity she had cultivated through her writing. "Yes, I've been reflecting on boundaries," she began, her voice steadying. "I think it's important for us to define what that looks like moving forward, not just for our son's sake, but for us too." Jake nodded, encouraging her to continue. She pressed her lips together, feeling the weight of her words. "I've realized that part of my healing involves being able to communicate openly about our past. It's not easy, but avoiding it hasn't helped either of us." Jake's expression softened, revealing a flicker of understanding. "I know I've made mistakes, and I want to do better. I'm willing to have those conversations if you are." His sincerity stirred her emotions, and for a moment, Martha felt hopeful. But then she questioned whether she was ready to truly unpack the layers of pain they had both endured. Could she articulate her feelings effectively without slipping back into defensiveness? "Let's start with specifics," she began, but Jake interjected, his tone shifting slightly. "I appreciate where you're coming from, but sometimes it feels like you harbor a lot of resentment. I want to address that. If we're planning a future for our son, we have to deal with our past." The tension in her chest tightened as she wrestled with a sudden wave of vulnerability. "It's not resentment, Jake. It's about how your actions impacted our family. I want to move past it, but I also want you to understand the effect your choices had on me." As Martha spoke, she felt a storm of emotion swirling, anger, sadness, and an unexpected swell of empowerment. Her ability to articulate her feelings at that moment was transformative. She was standing up for her needs, asserting her worthiness of respect in the relationship. "Then let's talk about it," Jake replied earnestly. "What do you need from me to feel secure moving forward?" Martha took a steadying breath, the question resonating deep within her. She contemplated her answer, realizing that it was not only about his response, but also about acknowledging her own boundaries. I need consistency. I need reassurance that co-parenting means putting our son first while respecting our individual growth. Jake leaned in, his eyes searching hers. I can do that if we're both committed. I want our son to thrive and for us to evolve too. The conversation began to flow more freely, the walls between them cracking as they navigated past grievances. Martha listened carefully, noting Jake's shifts in perspective and how he expressed a commitment to change. With each exchange, a burgeoning trust built resilience in her heart. As they moved forward, however, doubts lingered in the back of her mind. Could this be enough? Just one conversation wouldn't negate their history. It was a beginning, yet there was still a treacherous path ahead. Just as Jake initiated a discussion about potential co-parenting guidelines, a familiar face appeared at the cafe's entrance. It was a mother from a support group she had once attended, someone from her past, dredging up feelings she thought she had laid to rest. The sight of her unexpectedly caused a stir within Martha. What secrets might this reunion uncover? Would it shatter the delicate peace she had started to cultivate with Jake? Or would it hammer home her resolve as she continued to craft her own future? Hold that thought, Martha said cautiously, her eyes fixed on the new arrival. Martha's heart pounded as she tried to process the unexpected appearance of the woman she thought she had left behind. Her mind flicked through memories of support meetings, shared struggles, and both the comfort and discomfort that had those gatherings brought. That familiar face could endanger her carefully constructed moment with Jake. "Is everything okay?" Jake asked, his brow furrowing slightly as he followed her gaze. Was it possible to articulate her feelings in this moment? Martha took a calming breath before answering. "I just need a moment," she replied, giving herself permission to acknowledge her own anxiety. She shifted in her seat, peering over to catch a glimpse of the woman who had sat through many discussions on co-parenting, loss, and personal growth. With her mind racing, Martha felt a heavy mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. This was not simply an interruption. It was a chance to confront her past vulnerabilities. She stood, feeling an urgency to address this link to a time when her life had felt less certain. "Excuse me, I'm going to say hello," she said to Jake, who nodded with a mixture of encouragement and concern. She reassured herself as she strode across the cafe, focusing on her intent rather than the quaking within her chest. The woman's name escaped her at first, another layer of uncertainty added to the moment. But as Martha approached, things snapped back into focus. "Jessica," she said finally, and the two women locked eyes. "Martha," Jessica exclaimed, a genuine smile breaking the tension. "It's been so long. How have you been?" Martha hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "I've been better, but I'm working on things," she replied, trying to borrow from the confidence she'd found when she spoke with Jake. "I see you at a cafe. Are you writing again?" Jessica's interest seemed sincere, and for a moment, Martha felt the warmth she remembered. "I am," she admitted, the walls she'd built around herself momentarily softening. "Juggling parenting and everything else, but I'm figuring it out." As the conversation flowed, Martha found herself increasingly at ease, opening up about her challenges while subtly navigating the terrain of shared experiences. Jessica expressed her own struggles with co-parenting, emphasizing the importance of transparency, something Martha was now increasingly trying to embrace. "I understand things can be complicated," Jessica said, her expression shifting to something more serious. "But don't forget to appreciate the breakthroughs you make along the way. It's easy to get lost in the conflict." Martha felt the weight of that observation settle inside her. Here she stood, having made strides in her own development, but still so entwined in the remnants of her past. Had her conversations with Jake opened doors she wasn't fully ready to enter? As she spoke with Jessica, an idea flickered across the back of her mind. Perhaps she should add meetings with others like them to her plans, maybe even direct support sessions, something to deepen her understanding and provide more space for healing. "Let's exchange numbers," Martha suggested, a surge of determination pushing her to forge connections that could benefit her growth. "I think we could help each other." Their conversation shifted back to co-parenting, and as they spoke, Martha caught glimpses of her own reflection in Jessica's experiences. Maybe it wasn't about compiling strategies, but understanding the emotional threads that woven through their journeys. When she returned to Jake, she carried both the essence of that connection and the sense of purpose she had felt while talking with Jessica. "What was that about?" Jake asked, his keen eyes inviting her to share. Martha paused, the moment flooded with possibility. Just a reminder of why open communication is essential, not just with each other, but in all aspects of our lives. As they continued their discussion, they touched on the complexities of co-parenting further, but a deep-seated determination pushed Martha to explore that possibility of support networks more seriously, capturing a newfound sense of purpose. Yet, as she navigated her own growth, a lingering thought nagged at her. The day was cyclical, and her pulse quickened as she wondered what repercussions all these connections might hold for her budding relationship with Jake. The escalating stakes of her emotional development loomed. Would they emerge stronger together or fracture under the weight of their histories? The momentum of transformation surged within her as she took a sip of her coffee, the warmth mingling with the cooling air of uncertainty. How would she navigate the intricate dance of co-parenting, growth, and the revived presence of her past? And as she pondered that question, the cafe door swung open once again, revealing yet another unexpected face from her past. Would this further complicate everything she had begun to rebuild? "Martha?" came the voice, soft yet filled with the weight of unspoken tension. Martha turned slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was unmistakable, laced with memories that felt simultaneously nostalgic and jarring. Her heart raced again, this time tinged with a mix of dread and an odd sense of nostalgia. Could it truly be her ex-husband's mother, Margaret? A woman who had once been a steadfast ally, now felt like an intruder in the fragile new life Martha was trying to forge. "Yes, it's me," she managed to respond, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Margaret." The name hung between them, suspended in a moment that felt heavy with unspoken history. Margaret's eyes softened, revealing traces of warmth amidst the tension. "I didn't mean to catch you off guard. I've been meaning to reach out. Can we talk?" The urgency in Margaret's tone struck a chord within Martha. Was this merely a social visit, or was there something deeper? The idea of revisiting old wounds loomed large in her mind. However, pushing away the doubts, she felt an instinctual pull to understand where this conversation could lead. "Sure," Martha replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just give me a second." She glanced back at Jake, who was now observing the interaction closely, curiosity etched all over his face. She waved him off lightly, signaling she would be right back. As she led Margaret to a quieter corner of the cafe, she took a moment to brace herself. The soft hum of conversations faded into a backdrop, creating a cocoon around them. The recent connection with Jessica flooded her thoughts, serving as an anchor for what was about to unfold. "Thank you for taking the time," Margaret said, settling into her seat. "I've missed our conversations. I know things ended on difficult terms." Martha glanced down at her own hands, fingers twisting nervously. The sting of broken relationships had not entirely faded. "It was complicated," she said. "Life changes people." "Yes, it does," Margaret's voice lowered, and she leaned in slightly. I hear about your struggles with co-parenting, and I want you to know I recognize how challenging that must be. I've observed how hard you're working for your son. Martha felt a mix of gratitude and skepticism. What did Margaret want from her? Was this genuine concern or a ploy to revisit their past? I'm trying, Martha admitted, vulnerability creeping into her tone. But sometimes it feels like I'm fighting against an invisible barrier. I just wish I had more support, people who understand what I'm going through. Margaret nodded solemnly, a hint of compassion glowing from her expression. That's why I came here. I wanted to offer my support again, though I know I can't take back what happened. The weight of history pressed upon them, but for Martha, there was hope in hearing these words. The prospect of shared understanding pushed her to question deeper. What does support look like to you, Margaret? You left when things became tumultuous. Can we move past that? For a moment, silence enveloped them. Martha's heart raced. Would Margaret retreat again, or would she rise to the occasion? I'm here, aren't I? It took courage for me to reach out, she finally replied, her voice steady. I want to be involved in my grandson's life. I understand I can't just walk back in without addressing the pain first. Martha blinked, taken aback by the openness. Memories of family gatherings, laughter over shared meals, and the warmth of belonging resurfaced. Was it possible they could rebuild this fractured relationship? You need to know, I genuinely want to support you and him, Margaret continued. Let's work through this together. Maybe I can help you navigate the challenges. Martha's mind swirled. The idea was alluring, but also overwhelming. What if it proved to be another misstep? And yet, the possibility of aligning their paths ignited a spark of resolve within her. All right, but it has to be honest and clear, Martha said. No more hiding behind the past. Margaret's eyes gleamed with hope. Agreed, this is a new beginning. As they discussed the frameworks for moving forward, Martha couldn't shake the burgeoning excitement and anxiety intertwined. She could feel the future shifting beneath her feet, like the ground tilting in a fresh direction. Hours passed quickly, and the cafe emptied around them. Martha felt lighter, as if a burden had lifted. Yet the conviction lingered. Her journey toward authenticity wouldn't be linear. It was riddled with complexities, like a tapestry of emotional threads. As she returned to Jake with a swirl of optimism and trepidation, the question of his response weighed heavily on her. What would he think of this unexpected ally? And just as they settled into conversation again, a tremor of apprehension gripped her heart once more when the door swung open yet again, this time revealing not just another familiar face, but someone whose arrival demanded reckoning, the father of her child. Martha? His tone was edged with a mix of expectation and uncertainty, leaving a charged silence in its wake. Would she embrace him, confront him, or retreat into the uncertainty once again? Martha's entire body froze at the sound of that voice, a voice she had once known so intimately. Each syllable struck her like a bell tolling in the distance, announcing an uninvited arrival to her carefully curated existence. She turned slowly, letting the reality of his presence wash over her, a tidal wave of conflicting emotions. Nick, she breathed. The name felt heavier after years of absence. He stood at the threshold, uncertainty etched on his face, and for a fleeting moment, she saw the boy he had once been before the weight of adult responsibilities and failures had settled on his shoulders. "What are you doing here?" Martha's tone couldn't hide the trepidation that coiled tightly within her stomach. "I came," he replied, his voice surprisingly steady despite the apparent tension. "Can we talk?" The swirling atmosphere within the cafe seemed to constrict around them, tightening the already fraught air that had just begun to feel a little lighter. Jack was chatting away at their table, blissfully unaware of the emotional upheaval creeping in from the entrance behind him. Martha's instincts screamed to protect this newfound peace at all costs. But as she stared into Nick's uncertain eyes, a conflict within her began to surface. "Now?" she asked incredulously, struggling to read the shrouded intentions behind his gaze. "After all this time?" Nick cleared his throat, the weight of their joint history pressing down upon him. "I know I haven't been around, but I heard you've been having a rough time." His voice dripped with concern masked by hesitance, and Martha couldn't tell if she should appreciate the concern or be wary of it. "Are you here to take responsibility?" she challenged, every ounce of her past hurt fueling her words. "Because if it's just to express some sort of faux concern, No," he interrupted, the urgency cutting through her defensiveness. "I'm here because I realize that I want to change things. I want to be in Jake's life. I want to be a part of his world, Martha." The fervor in his response shocked her. How could he so easily bypass years of hurt? She was accustomed to the notion that family could inflict pain, but she had grown weary of the hope that one day that pain might mend. The prospect of him being involved in Jake's life felt like walking a tightrope, exhilarating yet perilous. "Jake has been thriving," Martha stated firmly, holding her ground. "He doesn't need you swinging back into his life looking for some sort of redemption." "But I want to be better," Nick pressed, his voice softening. "For him and for you, if you'll let me have the chance." Martha wanted to believe him, crave the idea of a new beginning for their son, yet the distrust was ingrained in her. The last time he had promised change, she had surrendered hope only to be met with disappointment. "What qualifies you to say that now? What proof do I have that this isn't just some fleeting emotion?" "I don't have proof," he admitted, the honesty raw and almost tangible. "But I want to work for it. I want to earn my place in his life. I need to start somewhere, and today felt like a good day to try." As she took in his words, a glimmer of recognition sparked within her. It reminded her of her own resolve earlier with Margaret. Was it possible that both of them genuinely sought to change their paths? Or was she merely setting herself up for more heartache? The vulnerability was disarming, and she felt her walls steadily lowering, brick by brick. "Let's say I consider this," Martha replied cautiously. "What does that even mean? How do we begin to navigate that?" Nick paused, visibly gathering his thoughts. "I don't have all the answers yet, but I think it would be best to start by having an open conversation with you and Jake. To see him, to watch how he interacts in his space, and to understand firsthand what he likes, what he needs. Jake isn't just something easy to fix, Nick. He's been through so much already," she interjected, her heart racing as she considered the potential aftershocks. "I understand, but how can I prove to him that I'm serious about building this relationship if I don't start somewhere? Just give me the opportunity." The sincerity within Nick's eyes held her steady, the tussle of uncertainty pushing her walls further down. Here they were, both seeking redemption, much like her conversation with Margaret. It felt surreal and yet real, and it was certainly not the life Martha had envisioned for herself. Just as her heart cautiously opened to the possibility of rebuilding, Jake, ever observant, looked up from their table, curiosity radiating from his expression. "Mom, who's that man standing there?" Martha felt the world shift again, a twisting vortex of anticipation and anxiety swirling in her chest. With their son awake to the tumultuous emotions surrounding them, an undeniable reckoning dipped in vulnerability loomed ahead. "Shall we call him over?" Nick asked gently, the weight of his own sentiment hanging heavy in the air. Martha's decision felt monumental, charged with potential and peril. She glanced between Nick and Jake, each face reflecting parts of her life, a decision inflected with more than just personal stakes. There was so much on the line, and she couldn't shake the question that gnawed at her. Would reaching out be an embrace or another fracture? "Martha?" Nick's voice brought her back from the precipice of her thoughts. The moment of truth was here, but what would she decide? Martha felt the tension in her body coalesce, teetering on the very edge of choice. each heartbeat echoed her hesitation. The image of her son, blissfully unaware at the table, reignited her instinct to protect him from potential upheaval. Yet here stood Nick, trying to write a new narrative, reclaiming strands of his past, and she faced the swirling emotions of possibility intertwined with apprehension. Slowly, she met Nick's gaze. "You're serious about this?" she breathed, allowing the question to carry the weight of their history. The past echoed through a quiet intensity that seemed to envelop them. "Yes," he replied with profound conviction. "I won't vanish again, Martha, I promise." The sincerity in his voice pierced through the fog of confusion. Unlike before, where remorse felt like fleeting words laden with empty intentions, this carried a clarion call for accountability. Yet he had still abandoned them previously, leaving her to grapple with the residue of solitude and abandonment. With backward glances at her son, her heart raced as she imagined the implications. Could they genuinely construct a relationship where their son felt safe, or would it become another labyrinth of disappointment? "Fine," Martha said, summoning courage, "but we do this with Jake. You need to understand that he has a say in this, and we have to approach it all carefully." Nick nodded fervently, and just then he took a cautious step forward, breaking the invisible barrier that had kept them apart for so long. "Martha," Jake called, his voice peppered with confusion and a hint of excitement. "Who is that man?" The moment of truth knocked at her door, forcing her to choose between the fragments of her past and the looming potential for a healthier future for her son. "Jake," she began, bracing herself, "this is your dad." With that simple introduction, Martha glimpsed a myriad of possibilities unfurl before her. Would Jake welcome this man whom he barely knew into his world? Or would he retreat, fearful of the repercussions? Jake looked between her and Nick, a mixture of curiosity and caution etched into his features. "Dad, I thought he lived really far away," he said, visibly perplexed. "Yes, buddy, and he wants to spend some time and get to know you better," Martha replied, her voice faltering yet steady. "But we need to talk about what that looks like together." Nick knelt down to Jake's eye level. "I've missed a lot, haven't I? I'm really sorry for that. But I'd love the chance to learn about you. Let's start fresh. What kind of things do you like? What's your favorite game?" Martha held her breath, watching as every minute gesture unfold. She half expected Jake to shy away, but instead, a glimmer of interest sparked in his eyes. Their son took a hesitant step forward. "I like dinosaurs," he responded, his brow furrowing with uncertainty yet flickering hope. As Nick's face lit up with a genuine smile, Martha felt the warmth of pride blossom within her. Here was a moment where they could enact the healing she had longed for, one encompassing openness, understanding, and courage. Nick, adjusting to this new dynamic, engaged Jake in conversation about dinosaurs, asking him about favorite characters and movies. Martha marveled at the way the walls began to dissolve in real time. Clarity washed over her. Perhaps hope could flourish through connection. Martha watched, feeling an unexpected wave of emotion surge as she grasped the weight of the moment at hand. This wasn't about the past. It was about beginning anew, where they could establish new rhythms, new celebrations, and new memories. Jake's laughter filled the air, creating a bridge of connection that he had longed for. And she felt a moment of acceptance toward Nick for pursuing an empathetic approach. They could evolve, even from shattered beginnings. Feeling the tension of years fade into resolve, Martha interjected. "Remember, we have to create boundaries for this too. We need to talk about co-parenting, so let's do it right together." Both Nick and Jake turned their attention toward her, and she felt a sense of recognition meld into the space. They were stepping into the unknown together. As the conversation flowed naturally, Martha felt an overwhelming sense of achievement settle within her. Her voice had been heard, They all had a chance to carve out a path toward healing. She wasn't merely surviving anymore. She was making strides in creating a future that honored all of their complexities, hers, Jake's, and Nick. Days later, as Martha penned the next chapter of her manuscript, the words poured from her with an unfiltered clarity that had once eluded her in darker times. She had gained perspective on the power of forgiveness, a transformative path guided through honesty and openness. Now she recognized that rebuilding didn't mean dismissing the pain. It meant integrating all the pieces into a narrative of resilience. The discourse she engaged in with both Nick and Jake transcended difficulties. It was about creating a nurturing environment where everyone could flourish. Fingers dancing across the keyboard, Martha found herself breathing life into the stories that were waiting to emerge, not just her own, but those of every individual striving to reclaim their narratives. Her heart swelled with potential as she connected these memories into a vision that looked toward a brighter tomorrow. Martha's journey had changed the moment she stepped into her vulnerability, transforming her pain into purpose. She was no longer the woman sitting alone at her kitchen table, estranged from her dreams. Now she was a published author, a mother with a voice, and perhaps most importantly, a woman embarking on a courageous journey toward freedom. And with each word she crafted, she felt an inalienable sense of empowerment solidifying within her soul. She had embraced her truth, woven it into the tapestry of her existence, and through it, she had inspired not only herself, but everyone around her. So here lies the call to you. Take that leap of faith, embrace your voice, communicate openly, and choose to engage with the complexities of your relationships. Through your courage, you may find the healing potential within, just as Martha did. Now, if you felt this journey resonate with you, you need to subscribe now to our channel. Do not miss these exclusive emotional stories, and leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below your thoughts and theories about Martha's incredible journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Your support makes a difference. Don't wait even one more second to share.